Hello, my friends. Katie Day with the Moving to Texas team here with another episode of the Real Advice podcast. I'm excited to dig in with this week's guest. He started his real estate journey back over 10 years ago in 2012 in Boston. And after working in the business as mainly a rental agent, jumped into sales and just skyrocketed from there. It's been named one of the Real Trends top teams in Massachusetts year after year, has a team of over 10 people right now. And I'm just excited to dig in on his growth and team and all things. Please join me in welcoming Charlie King. I feel like I should call you Charles King.
Yeah. No, thanks for
They're
having me.
fancy.
Yeah, Charles is for the marketing, but you can call me Charlie. So
I feel so special, you know. I get to call you Charlie. No. Anyways, how are you doing today, man?
I'm great. How are you?
Doing well, doing well. So for those that may not know you, you obviously got into the business a while ago, right?
Yeah.
Over 10 years ago.
Mhm.
What kind of was the journey to getting to starting in real estate?
So yeah, plan was never to be in real estate. I graduated college 2010 from Boston University, and I was a hospitality major.
Okay.
So at the time, I was interning for the Boston Red Sox, kind of helping oversee like the concessions, everything with my boss there. And then somebody approached me about doing a food truck startup company. So I was about ready to get very involved in this food truck startup company where we were going to partner with Sodexo and be their official food truck provider at different college campuses in the New England area. And the main person who was starting it was days away from signing the contract. Unfortunately, he got really sick and ended up in the hospital and rehab for multiple years. So I was told that he was just in the hospital. I wasn't actually told how sick he was or what was really happening. So I'm like, I kept putting off other job opportunities, different things. And I finally I was working at bars. I was the smallest bouncer around Boston. I worked these different odd jobs. I even made guacamole tableside at this Mexican restaurant in the Seaport. But so finally, it was December 2011. I'm like, you know what? I'm just going to get my real estate license and do rentals while I wait for this to happen.
Yeah.
January, I finally passed the test. Took 2 times. Got my license and I started doing rentals, and here we are now. So.
I feel like that's a lot of people's journey, right? Of
Yes.
Didn't really think that real estate was going to be what I did, but I kind of got there in a roundabout way. And I think that one of the things that I feel like is a good career path is, hospitality or,
Mm-hmm.
Waiting tables, being a bartender, doing something where it's customer service. Just because you can think on your feet generally, right? And have conversations with people, build rapport quickly, stuff like that.
Mm-hmm. I think I almost think no matter what industry you go to in, someone should work a hospitality job because you learn you're dealing with people. Every person's different, and it's a great way to kind of work on communication skills, manners, all of that. The hospitality industry is very challenging.
For sure. I always find it interesting on the flip side of that, when we have someone that maybe potentially joining the team and we'll take them out to lunch or to grab a drink or something like that and see how they treat wait staff. Because I feel like that's on the flip side of it, right?
Yeah.
One, you should know how to build rapport quickly and have those conversations and deal with difficult people. But then two, seeing how people treat people at a restaurant can be a big red flag,
Yeah. Someone always told me, you're bringing up how people treat the wait staff and everybody at a restaurant. And then also if you ride in a car with somebody, how are they as a driver sometimes? I mean, I have my good days and bad days with that, but I get what they're saying.
Well, you're born and raised Massachusetts, right?
Yes. Yeah.
So you're probably a pretty aggressive driver. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. I've never driven in New England. I've been there a few times, and the first time I ever went, I was like, yeah, I'm not gonna drive here. It's
the highways, the streets, especially Boston. I mean, Boston's such an old city, it wasn't built on a grid at all.
Yeah.
So it makes no sense driving around, and overall people are angry drivers for sure. Traffic's horrible.
Yeah, that's just every major city these days, but it is what it is. Anyways, so okay, you got into real estate, you did your own thing for a little while. How long were you kind of doing your own thing before you started a team?
So got in 2012. I just worked at a rental agency, left in 2013, worked at a small boutique real estate agency in South Boston, which was a very up and coming area at the time. So it was a really good place to kind of like grow my business. As I was growing, the whole area was growing
Yeah.
with a lot of like 20 and 30 somethings. So that was really good. So then I kind of outgrew working at the boutique. And then 2017, a couple developers that I'm really close with, they're like, we think you should go off and do your own thing. So 2017, I decided to go off and start Charles King Real Estate in March. And it happened very quickly. I didn't even have my broker's license yet. So this all happened really fast. Probably wasn't super organized doing it. At the time I had myself and like my marketing assistant. It was just the two of us. And then I ended up bringing over a couple agents with me a couple months later who are actually Parker and Mike Ludwig. They're still with me today. And this was in 2017. So they've been through, so we were Charles King Real Estate for 2 years. And then winter of 2019 is when Compass kind of approached me, and I decided to kind of take the brokerage to Compass and leverage like the Compass platform.
Yeah.
And that's where I started the Charles King Group.
It's interesting because I feel like I've been seeing a lot of team or brokerages or like teamerages, right? Like,
Mm-hmm.
you're kind of your own shop and then you go hang under an umbrella, right? So
Yeah.
whether that's, any number of brokerages, like I've been seeing that a lot. What kind of went through your decision-making process of being like, oh, I'm an independent brokerage, we're doing our own thing.
Mm-hmm.
I think most people start independent brokerage because they're like, oh, I'm going to keep 100% of the money, right?
Yeah.
To be like, okay, we're going to hang our hat, here now.
I think a couple things were being a brokerage it's you don't realize, kind of like you're saying, the hidden costs,
Yeah.
Also the headaches. It's like I remember being in Charleston, South Carolina, and we had this pretty big deal closing north of 2 million, and we were holding escrow, and the payment had to get put out that day.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm trying to go find a bank in Charleston, South Carolina to release the money.
Yeah.
And I don't know, South Carolina stuff opens a little later than the Northeast. So I have all these angry people calling me in the morning. And I was just like, I don't want to really deal with this anymore.
Yeah.
So between the liability, stuff and the holding escrow, I just was like, why not go join somebody that's going to do that for you and kind of spend more time building your business versus like getting stuck on that stuff.
Well, and I think that like a lot of times do like the paperwork too and stuff like that. Like, I like having another set of eyes on all of our docs,
Yes.
and all of the things. We
Your
never went the
paperwork's not my
route.
strength.
Yeah.
So
For most salespeople, it's not, right?
yeah, no, paperwork is definitely not my strength. A couple of the developers I mentioned for you that I'll list like 4 to 8 unit buildings sometimes. I barely even had listing agreements. So paperwork has not been my strength. So it makes sense for me not to have a brokerage anymore.
Well, so rewinding on that a little bit, like that's definitely unique. I feel like most people like they start their team, they have their team for a little while, and then they realize like how much money they're paying to a brokerage. So they go start their
Yeah.
own brokerage because they have the team. And you kind of did it like, all right, I'm going to start my own shop, and then agents joined you.
Yeah.
Looking back on it now, like if you could give someone advice on like starting a brokerage or starting a team, right? Would you like have done it the same way, or like what advice would you give to someone if they were kind of
I
going on
think
that
at the
path?
time starting the brokerage was the right move because it helped get me some more business in terms of new development in the area.
Yeah.
I probably wouldn't change anything, to be honest. I think the timing to go to Compass was perfect too. Compass helped kind of catapult my team. We grew a lot. It was kind of in the pandemic years too. And say what you want. I mean, I'm not there anymore, but the tools are great. It was a great platform to kind of grow the team with, and it was also a good place to recruit. Like a lot of people, half my team came from Compass, whether they're individual agents or
Yeah.
they were approaching other people. So I do think having a platform that's not just you it's beneficial in my opinion.
Yeah. Well, and it's hard too, I think, like as a brand new brokerage owner to be able to be like, here are all of the tools we offer, right? Because if you don't
Right.
have revenue coming in, it's difficult to
Very.
start, providing these tech tools and different things like that. So it's like, when you're plugging into a larger entity, in a larger brokerage, they generally already have that set up.
Hmm.
So, depending kind of on where you're at in your business, if you're starting thinking about a team or things like that,
Right.
like, those are probably things to think about.
Yeah. Everyone's at a different stage of their career. So that's why I think, but having your own brokerage now, and I think it's only going to get worse with some liability issues and all the insurance and people cracking down. We won't even go into this, but the whole buyer agency stuff that we've been getting talked about, I think having your own brokerage is going to be even more challenging than it's been in the past few years.
Yeah. Um, it's definitely going to be a different real estate landscape as
Yes.
as we move into the future. So, these are definitely things to think about. So now you said you have 10, I think, team members, right?
Yeah.
Plus some
I'd
admin
say, yeah,
support.
10 agents, including myself. I'm still in production. Then I have a full-time marketing coordinator. And then we have somebody virtually that helps with a lot of behind the scenes stuff as well.
Very cool. And so, um, as far as like growing the team and adding
Hmm.
more team members and things like that, like I think that that's generally the hardest thing for people, right? Is to find good team members. And so
Yes.
what's some advice you could give to someone if
I
they're
have
looking to
a
recruit?
I have a great group right now, to be honest. And I'm kind of the belief that I'm really into sports. So there's a couple ways you can do it. You can build through free agency, which would be trying to get established agents kind of
Mhm. Mhm.
into your team, or build quote unquote through the draft. And I personally like bringing in new agents and kind of training them and working with them. And um, my whole thought is, if somebody has a great work ethic, solid network really helps. But if you kind of are coachable, then might take a little longer than established agent to see something. But in the long run, I think most of the agents on my team have been newer to the business. I'd say like 2020 or earlier, or sorry, or later. Half our teams like that now, and I think this year, where deal flow is down overall across the
Yeah.
country, some of my agents are having their best years ever.
That's awesome.
So they're kind of just coming into themselves, and it's just like constantly marketing to the network. Um, and then our marketing person handles everybody's email marketing and helps with social media. So I think I'm starting a team. I think you want to look at both options, but to kind of get how you really want your systems in place, it's easier to train people when they're newer, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely pros and cons to both.
Hmm.
We've had success with both. Um, so it's always interesting to hear other team leaders because it's like, oh yeah, like this has worked amazingly, or this has worked terrible. And it's like, oh, I had the exact opposite experience.
Hmm.
What are some things that y'all do as far as like training? You mentioned you do marketing support, your marketing
Yep.
person helps with like email marketing and newsletters and stuff like that. Like what are some other things that y'all do as
So
far as like
yeah.
development?
So we're in, as you and I know each other through, we're in the Tom Ferry team coaching program. I got into that probably February of 2021. I was always in Tom Ferry as like an elite client, but I did the team. Ever since I did that, it's kind of been game changing in how I've grown the team.
Yeah.
Um, Getting a lot of my systems and structure in place. We also now we do a lot with Curator.
Okay.
So Curator handles our website, and Curator does the email marketing comes from Curator. So between my marketing coordinator Jen and all the Curator stuff, they're generating a lot of our content every week. So we're sending out probably 2 to 3 emails a week to our database, plus other leads in there. Um, we've been off and on. It's been a love hate relationship with Zillow, but we're Zillow Premier Agent where we are, and then we're also part of Curator has this new program called Attract that we've been running since early April this year, and we're starting to see some good stuff, good traction with that program. Training wise, other stuff is we try to I try to have weekly meetings with everyone. I'm in the office. We try to everyone's in the office a good amount. We have Sisu for tracking. We just implemented that again. I took a little break from it, but I think Sisu is great in terms of tracking activities and calls and everything. So we're not perfect in terms of our implementation of everything, but I feel like we're kind of trending on the right direction.
For something like Sisu,
Hmm.
one of the things that I know I hear all the time, and I also feel it often from my own team. How do you get your agents to use Sisu in like activity tracking and different things like that?
So my coach came up with a great thing. You don't track in Sisu, you don't get any leads.
I super
So
straightforward, but I'm sure
straightforward.
it works.
And then I created this new. I actually stole it from somebody else in Tom Ferry. A Monday motivation email, and in that email, like you list out everybody's pendings right now, active listings we have coming, but then also in that I'll put who had the most calls in the week and who had the most conversations, and
I
I can
like
just
that.
pull that all from Sisu. Yeah, I
Yeah.
can share that with you if you wanted. So
We do something similar on Saturdays. And it's like just kind of a recap of the week, right?
yeah,
Of like this is everything that happened, escrows that closed, people that put something under contract. But I like the calls and conversations because that's something that we track, right? Calls, conversations,
calls,
appointments.
conversations. I'm big into. I built my business a lot through like networking and
Yeah.
sphere of influence. So I have that on. Like I don't have that in the email, but I want people tracking like how many networking things are you going to. Even like when I tell people, it's like, I mean, obviously you're very good at social media, Katie, but I'm like DM people, like get to know people, like do the personal touches, and
Yeah.
so I'd say since we've past few months we've become a lot more dialed in with like our systems tracking and having everything running like a business.
Yeah. That's good. I mean, and that's super simple advice, but like probably very a lot of people are like, "Oh, well, I'm, checking their thing every single day and this and that." It's like, "Well, we're checking it, but then if you didn't do it, you get removed from lead flow." So it's
Right.
very actionable, right? Because
Yeah, I mean, I
most
can
agents
see
want
it.
leads.
So and then it's like when you put it in the email and you show like, oh, Parker made only 5 calls this week, then usually next week it shows that he's made a lot more than that because he's like,
Yeah.
he sees that he's at the bottom of the list.
Yeah.
So he's one of my best callers. That's why I say his name.
He's gonna listen to this. He's gonna be like, "Damn it, Charlie, I
Yeah,
make more calls than
no,
that."
he's great. So
But I mean, sports reference, right? Like the scoreboard, right? And having the
yeah,
rankings is huge, especially because most people, most real estate agents are competitive.
right.
And seeing where you rank always gets people.
Yeah, that was kind of circling back. Part of the reason too why I went to Compass was I felt like I kind of outgrew being a little brokerage in the sense that I wanted to go be exposed to other bigger agents and be around more people and kind of compete in some ways and learn and compete. So I just felt like um, I kind of maxed out at the time being my own little brokerage, and I had to kind of take that next step of my career.
Well, I think it's tough too, like especially as an independent brokerage, like finding people, right?
Yeah,
And obviously being in a coaching community like the Tom Ferry community, like you have then other people that you can like network with and mastermind with and like
right.
throw ideas off of. But like for a lot of independent brokers, you're kind of on your own little island, right? And
Yeah.
so affiliating with a larger brokerage locally or a national brokerage like definitely gives you that exposure to other ideas
Yes.
and people that are selling more real estate than you and different things like that. So
100%. And I think the other thing I'd say to people too is get into coaching, some type of coaching program, or join a brokerage that has a lot of support like that. Because when you see sometimes you get stuck. If you're in a little area, a little city or a certain area, you only are thinking like you think those agents should think. But
yeah.
I'd say the biggest game changing thing for me was when I went right before COVID to a elite retreat in person in 2020. I just saw how like different people think from across the country and even world. And I was like, whoa, there's other ways to think, other ways to do this. And just exposing yourself to other opinions outside of like your little bubble where you live is very big, in my opinion, to growth.
Yeah. And I've always found that like, there are definitely people in our local markets, that's like you have your friends and you guys share with each other and things like that.
Mhm.
But like when you get on that larger scale, right, and you're talking to people in other cities, in other states, in other countries, it's like, here's my entire playbook. Here's my
Exactly.
entire, thing
Yeah.
for whatever it is that you're looking for.
And it's even
Um,
like the dinners and lunches and breakfast and all that is more valuable than even the seminar sometimes.
yeah,
Tom
yeah,
does a
yeah,
great
yeah.
job, but I'm just like, so
I don't think he listens to the podcast. I think you're good, man. We don't,
yeah, yeah.
Um, so you mentioned something earlier about how, your agents are all pretty new in the business, but a lot of them are having, their best year ever, or having, really good sales years so far.
You,
For someone that just got into the business,
mhm.
a newer agent, like this year has definitely been an interesting one, right?
Yeah.
What advice would you give to someone if they were like brand new or new-ish on how to kind of like jumpstart?
Yeah. So we have three agents. Two started last year in 2022 and kind of started as the market started turning a little bit with mortgage rates, and then one brand new this year. And for them, they didn't really know the industry when it was like your phone just rang no matter what.
Yeah.
Like, so I think it's been good in the sense that they're learning. It's kind of like, yeah, you have to call people. You have to follow up all the time. You have to be more aggressive in going out and getting the business. Um, but as a new agent, and if you're on your own, like you're not going to know how to do that. So it's either find a mentor in your office or join a team. I think I started in 2012. How I did it, I used to sit on Craigslist all day and just do Craigslist buy owners trying to get rental listings.
Yeah.
And that's how I kind of built all my connections over the years. You can't really do that anymore. So that was 11 years ago. Now I think the industry is a lot more complex. There's a lot more people in it. So I think align yourself with somebody who you think can mentor you, and you're going to learn a lot and give you opportunities to like do a smoke inspection, sit open houses. Maybe they have leads, maybe they have buyers you can help them with. I know for me, how I originally started structuring everything is I bring somebody in on pretty much every single deal I have, and I have them be as like my showing assistant or listing assistant, and it gives them money in their pocket. Also gives them great experience on learning the business. So I think if you're a new agent, you just try to like say you go sign up for ABC brokerage and they're like, we'll give you 95% split, but that's great because you don't know what to do.
And 95% of zero is still zero,
Yeah.
right?
So I think for new agents, it's trying to find somebody who's going to provide the best training, coaching, leads, and just opportunities to learn the business.
And so I just want to rewind a little bit. You 10 years ago were combing Craigslist for people that were listing their rentals on Craigslist.
Yeah.
And then you were calling them?
Yep. So we call and email, literally would sit there and probably send out 100 to 50 emails or calls or reach out to people a day. So in Boston, it's a little messed up. Boston, the tenant pays the broker fee.
Okay.
So we would call these landlords and be like, hey, we'll list this property for you. You don't have to pay anything, but we'll do all like the background. We'll take photos. We'll list it. And again, it's not, I mean, rents are super high now. I mean, we'll rent a 2-bedroom for $4,000.
Yeah.
But the tenant has to come up with that. And usually they have to pay 3 to 4 months up front. It's a lot of
Between
money.
like first month deposit,
First month, last
commissions,
month,
different.
security.
Yeah.
But that's how I built my business. My first year, I think I did like 30 something rentals in one sale. It's like, it just took, and each year I just kind of kept doing a ton of rentals. And,
Yeah.
but that's how a lot of these rentals turned into sales.
I was going to say, I'm sure at a certain point, these people that have been renting, especially if they're having to come up with 4 months worth of rent,
Exactly.
are then coming back to you, be like, hey, I'm trying to buy now.
Yeah.
So
the rentals are also a great way. So we still do a lot of rentals as a team.
Yeah.
And they are a great way for people to learn. Because I would say the agents, like, if you help a renter, nobody's willing to help them because it's such a like bleep show around Boston. Landlords are where all the money is. But if you help a renter, they usually are feeling pretty loyal to you, and there's a good chance they're going to reach out to you again when the time comes. Also, it's a great way to learn just how the industry works and how, like, I think new agents get into it and they don't necessarily realize how agents can be not the nicest people in the world, or like how and same with clients. It's like rental clients tend to be super flaky, or they might be like, oh, I'm going to go see this place with this person. Like there's no written exclusive agreements. And so rentals have just been a great way to help agents kind of get their foot in the door, learn like the good about real estate and the bad. So,
well, and at least for us here, as far as with when our team works rentals, it's like you've got to qualify everyone and like do all of these things. And it's like, there's a lot of different steps that we do on our team versus like, and it's been because of years of doing them. And it's like, oh, well, like first it would just be like, oh, Charlie, you want to see a house? Let me go show you. And then it's like, oh, you're actually already
Right.
working with another realtor. You've already
Hmm.
submitted 4 applications and, A, B, C, D. So it's like
Yeah.
specific questions to ask, information to get and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But I mean, that's interesting as far as like building the business, and makes sense. But I'm sure it was also probably, I just know that like FISBOs, like for the sale FISBOs,
Hmm.
people are always like, oh yeah, that's a great way to like start getting listings. I mean, and most people that like are renting it themselves, like generally don't want to talk to you. So I'm
Yeah.
sure that
We
was,
we would show up and there'd be like 10 other agents. So it'd be like, it would be like, who could take photos the fastest, who could go back and get their Craigslist ads on,
yeah,
get somebody to see it and get an application for the landlord. So
interesting.
once you did that, so it was like a rat race.
Yeah.
Once you did that, then the landlord, most of the time the landlord was like, oh yeah, I really liked you, I'm going to work with you next year and all that. But it was like literally like all these open listings would be like, who could get the business first or who could rent it first,
Yeah.
usually would then get the landlord.
Do y'all have like a section on your MLS for rentals or no?
We do. We do.
Okay.
But in Boston, a lot of rentals aren't put on there because
Yeah.
people don't want to go broke. So it's like now we
Gotcha.
just put them on Zillow. People come to us directly.
Yeah.
So it's like we can rent it ourselves, keep $4,000 versus 2,000 and share it. So
Yeah.
there's no written. Well, I don't know. Maybe there is, but Boston isn't a mass. It's Zillow. There's a lot on Zillow. There's a lot more on Zillow than on MLS. But
Yeah.
there's a good amount this time of year on MLS. So
Interesting. I would imagine so with like all of the universities and
yeah,
different.
tons of universities. Like there's Boston's a pretty big. There's a lot of different industries, which is good for the real estate market.
Yeah.
But it's definitely the big. Yeah, September 1's a huge. That's the biggest rental day when all the schools and the changeover, the universities moving in and out for rentals.
Well, and so I know like you started your career in Boston, but y'all cover a pretty, for Massachusetts, pretty wide geographic
Yeah, yeah.
region. So like where does your team cover?
So I started by doing a lot of Boston proper. I grew up in a town called Hingham, where I live now with my wife and daughter. It's where I grew up. It's about 15 miles south of the city
Okay.
on the coast. And how I've kind of built my team for the most part, not everyone, but a lot of the people I'd say from the last 3 or 4 years that I brought in either live in the South Shore, which is these Hingham, Cohasset type towns I was mentioning, and are from here. So kind of building that network and that pipeline. A lot of us all lived in the city, and naturally everybody's moved back to the South Shore as you get older.
Yeah.
So we do a lot of anywhere from Boston, and it's called the South Shore, all the way down the coast, and we cover Cape Cod,
Okay.
in the islands a little bit. Like we've done some stuff on Nantucket and Martha's Vineyard. But South Shore and Boston are probably 1 and 1A in terms of business. It used to be Boston super heavy, and now the South Shore has taken over. But we do cover a pretty wide range, but they all kind of flow together.
Yeah,
So
for sure.
like during the pandemic, I had people calling me who lived in the city. Was like, can you come we got to go get a Cape House. Get me out of here.
Yeah.
So that's kind of how the Cape Cod business started. Like that's how that kind of came to us doing more work down there. And then where I live in the South Shore, a lot of people summer Cape Cod and the islands. So
For sure. Okay. All right. One last, or actually I have 2 questions.
okay.
Lobster roll, butter or no butter?
Probably no butter. I'm just
Okay.
more. I like both, but cold.
Okay. All right. And then the other question is also food related, but it is a question I always ask everyone on this podcast. And it is, if it were your last meal on earth, what would you be eating?
Ooh, I might stick with lobster or seafood, and
Yeah.
I might do like a spicy seafood red sauce pasta dish.
All right. I like it. Is there a particular place that you get that somewhere in
No, there's a
Mass?
few good ones.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a few good ones. I like food too much, so that last meal is tough. It could be time of year where I'm saying that, but yeah, I'm trying to think. That's a great question. A lot of choices for me. So
I like it. All right, man. Well, I appreciate you and all your info shared. If someone doesn't already follow you on social, where's the best place for them to connect with you?
Probably Instagram. At my handle's at the underscore Charles underscore King underscore group. So a little bit of a pain to type in, but just put Charles King group into Instagram and you'll find me.
All right. Very good. Well, I appreciate you and I hope to see
Thanks
you
for
soon.
having me. Thank you.